Today, we back, y'all. I missed y'all too. We are talking about vocal effects. Vocal effects are extremely important to the aesthetic, creativity, and feeling of a song. In this video, I am going to share my general philosophy on vocal effects, but this can really be applied to effects on anything in general. I'm also going to cover a lot of mistakes or occurrences I see. So if you're liking the vibe, like and subscribe. Let's get into the video. This is my overall philosophy when it comes to vocal effects. There are 4 ways that I categorize vocal effects. We have hear, detect, sense, and feel. Now, hear is the famous weekend type vocal reverb where the vocal effect is hugely a part of the vocal sound. They intended for you to be paying attention to this vocal effect quite obviously. This is often creative effects or like stylistic effect choices, but there are no rules. Now, detect is when you can hear the effect, but it's not a huge part of the vocal sound. It's easy to notice, but it's not calling a huge amount of attention to itself. It's really just accompanying the vocal along the journey of the song. It's detectable. It helps to create a space or the color of the space that the vocal is in. It also helps enhance the vibe and the emotion of how this vocal is being presented. Now, the third way is sense. This is where you can sense a little bit of space on the vocal, but you might not be able to tell exactly what it is, but you're hearing something. If you listen really hard, you could probably find it and figure out what it is. You could kind of decipher it, but it's a very subtle thing that can be used to create depth or help enhance the dimension of a space or the liveliness even of a space. And the last, final, fourth one is feel. For this one, you can't really hear, detect, or sense it, but you feel it when it's gone. If you turned off the effect, you miss it, but you can't really hear the effect. This is the most challenging one because when you study other people's music, you don't know that it's there. It's tough to hear the early reflections sitting something back in the mix or creating a sense of space or room on a sound. It's tough to hear how subtle reverb, delay, or chorusing is changing the EQ and the energy of a vocal because you can't really pick it out amongst the track. But now that the philosophy is laid out there, let's talk about some examples. So before we start listening to audio, I want to talk to y'all about how I lay out my vocal effects so I can balance them easily. So if we look at this session, we've got some lead vocals right here. This is intro, verse, pre, hook. We have some ad-libs, some stacks, and some background vocals down here. If I switch to my mixer view, these are my effects for my lead vocals right here. Doubler, a couple delays, a few reverbs. Now how I have this set up, it's one lead vocal delay send that goes to all of these lead vocal delay aux tracks or returns, whatever you want to call it, buses, whatever. And then I have another one that stands for lead vocal reverb, and that goes to these 2 reverbs. On the hook, I have added an extra reverb, so that's just called that reverb 3, and that's going here. All of these vocal effects are going to my vocal effects bus, and these 2 reverbs are going to a verb fader so that I can treat them as one reverb sound together. The reason why I like to set up my effects like this on my lead vocal is because I can easily come here and balance them really quickly, and I have a controller so I can just shift control, left click on doubler, and now all of these come up on my faders and I can adjust the balance however I want. That allows for me to get a balance and a blend of my effects very easily and audition what I'm liking more of and less of. And then I like to have an overall fader for the reverb because maybe I like that overall blend of the reverbs, but I just want to turn that up or down together very easily with one fader. Or maybe I want to, in this case, EQ it or do whatever I want to do to that entire reverb sound. Then when we go to the ad-libs, I'm using sends in the traditional sense. So I have, a doubler, room, plate, hall on these, and all of these sends are being used in a traditional way. But again, with my controller, I like to bring up all of these. Honestly, if I'm using them all, I'll do something like this. In this case, since I have this controller, I can control 2 at a time. Say I want to control this doubler, I can flip this, click here, so I can control these 2 at a time, so I can get a blend with 2 things at a time that way. But this actually brings me to the first mistake that I see people making. Everything has shared effects. With the processing power we have today, it's way cooler of a vibe to have a specific vocal aesthetic with your your effects and then have somewhat of a different vocal aesthetic with your ad-libs and your background vocals. That helps create your separation, your depth, your actual like sonic perceived separation of, oh, these vocals sound like this and these other vocals sound another way, because the effects are different on them. It helps your ear pick them apart. People are trying to get depth and separation, but you're putting the same effects on everything, so it's blending everything together more. So I generally have my lead vocals having a certain type of aesthetic, and then my other vocals, they just have a different type of aesthetic. Now, it's not crazy different unless that's what the song wants to be. They still match, they're just different vocal effects choices. Now, for these ad-libs, it's nothing wrong with putting effects directly on vocals. It's okay. Like in this case, I got deverb on these vocals. I got an air flanger on these vocals at 15%. Nothing is wrong with that. I often do that on ad-libs and background vocals more than I do it on lead vocals, but I will do it on a lead vocal. This comes to the second mistake. People putting their effects on vocals all the time. Again, there's nothing wrong with it per se. It depends on the song, but if you want your lead vocal to be cutting through the mix, you want to have the most control over how you place your vocal. It's a lot easier to do that when you're not putting your reverbs and your delays directly on the vocal. It's a lot easier to create that depth and that separation from the effect and the lead vocal and from the track, so you can actually have layers of separation. But if you're putting your effects directly on everything, it's a little more challenging to get that. Not impossible, you can do it, but it's a little more challenging. Now let's get into some audio examples. So hear, detect, sense, feel. Overall, generally, this is a balance thing. This is a level thing, okay? That is the most important part of this. I'm going to talk about all the other things, but seriously, the volume, the level, that's what I spend the most time on, is getting the level right. Obviously, if you want to hear it, it's going to be louder. If you want to detect it, it's going to be a little lower. If you want to sense it, it's going to be a little lower. If you want to feel it, gonna be very lower. Mainly a balance thing. The third mistake that I see people make, they focus on everything else except getting the levels right for the effect. They're trying to have their vocals cut through the mix, but they want the reverb to be super loud too. And they want the delay to be super loud and the chorusing to be super loud. Everything is super loud. All of the effects are super loud. It's not going to cut through the mix. How is my ear going to pay attention to the reverb, the delay, the chorusing, the lead vocal, and the ad-libs, and the backgrounds, and the instrumentation? My ear is going to be very confused. So you have to play with and take time finding the right levels for things. It's somewhat of a discovery of just when it feels right, when it emotionally starts to connect. Instead of spending all this time on everything else, start there. Let's listen to the verse and listen to where these effects are sitting. And I'm gonna mute the background vocals for now.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason. She's women like you that make it up to love again. No, need no proof, it's clear that you fucking with.
So the main reverb you hear is kind of a shortish, roomy thing going on. This one right here.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no.
That's the main one you hear, but it's complemented with this reverb.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason.
I found my balance that I like so that people are hearing that. They hear the color of the space. They hear what kind of space he potentially might be in. And then I'm balancing in my quarter note delay.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame.
So that reverb is more like a detect. You detect it, but it's not super loud for it to be like hugely a part of the vocal aesthetic. It is a part of the vocal aesthetic, but it's not about the reverb. And then when we come to this delay, you can hear that delay. Now this delay, it could be a mix between detect and sense, because you can hear it, but it only comes up a little bit when it needs to come up, and it's kind of just using to make the vocal performance feel like that.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason. See, it's women like you that make it up to love again.
So you can hear that, and if you really listen carefully with everything in context, I'll play it with everything in context real fast.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason.
You can hear that. I'd say that's detectable, but it could be detectable or sense. Now we have things that are not detectable, maybe things you can sense. So we have this slap. Let me solo this lead one more time.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame.
So we have that slap. So I'm gonna mute this slap and bring it back in.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason. See, it's women like you that make it up to love again. No, need no proof, it's clear that you fucking with other men.
Now, when I bring that slap in, you don't hear an audible slap, okay? You don't hear this. When I turn this up, you don't hear this.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces.
You don't hear that audible slap effect, but what I hear is a thickening and a little bit more personality, a little bit more confidence, a little bit more strength in the vocal. The way I have it EQ'd as well is I've darkened it with this EQ and potentially this culture vulture situation with some distortion and I don't know, probably some stuff with this, I don't know. But the frequency content of it that I'm blending back in is giving me an emotional feeling. So this is a feel example, right? You can't really even hear it with the vocal soloed. I'll A/B this with the music in all the way and it's a feel thing.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason. See, it's women like you that make it up to love again. No, need no proof, it's clear that you fuck.
It's almost like when I bring that in, he just stands a little bit more on top of the mix. It's helping me get the vocal louder without making it louder. You know what I'm saying? It's helping me get a little more emotion, a little more confidence without doing something else. So I'm using this effect for a feel thing, for an emotional thing, for an EQ thing as well. And then we have this doubler in this case, which let's see if we can hear, feel, or sense this.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason. See, it's women like you that make it up to love.
So this is one of those sense and feel situations. Now, again, the lines can be blurred. It's art, okay? It's all right. But when I bring this in, I hear that it fills out the space of the reverb and the width of the effect aesthetic on the vocal. It fills it out and it adds some nice little quick reflection type things. But in the context of a song, you might not be able to pick apart, oh, that's a doubler on there. And you might think it's a reverb or you might think it's a delay or something else. But it's supplementing the reverb and all of these effects with this doubler to fully build out that sound. Now, again, I want to stress the big part about this is leveling. As you can see, we're talking about levels here. We're talking about volume, okay? Let me make it plain. That's a big part of it. Spend time on getting the volumes correct for the emotional feeling of whatever world you're building with your effects. Then the next mistake that I see people make, I don't know, I think I'm on 4 maybe, the 4th mistake, is not EQing your effects. I get so many sessions and people just have Valhalla, 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 Valhalla delay, Valhalla delay, and they just left it how the preset was. And I'm like, dang, you feel me? How are you gonna add all of these reverbs and delays and all of these extra sounds to your song and not carve out the space for those new sounds to exist in context with your song? We got to fit this into the aesthetic appropriately. So with this doubler, for instance, I do a lot of high passing and low passing on my effects because I want certain sounds to cover the top end. If I want my vocal to be bright and airy, how many effects can be bright and airy? Maybe I can use an effect to give off a bright and airy aesthetic, but maybe the vocal is bright and airy and I want to supplement that with a darker reverb underneath that, or just get rid of some top end of certain effects so that the vocal air is what my ear hears and it doesn't hear the delay air, the reverb air, the chorus air. Or maybe I'm using the chorus to create the air. I don't know, but something needs to have the air. Everything can't have the air. That's where everything is harsh. So make a decision. So I'm EQing out unnecessary low end, and again, it's where mixes get muddy and unclear and unseparated. This is another reason why it may or may not be advantageous to have your effects on your tracks, because you want to turn down some of the frequencies that are making things unclear and less separated or muddy. So I'm turning down this frequency area right here and I'm high passing and low passing before I go into it. I'm doing a little compression on it and then no EQ on here. For the doubler, for the slap, we're turning down again some muddy frequencies, high passing and low passing. turning down some 2K, and then there's a high pass roll off before going into any of these effects, going into this distortion, and then high passing and low passing on this delay, EQing again some maybe muddy frequencies, some mid-range right here, high passing and low passing, same concept, high passing and low passing before, EQing out some frequencies that I don't need, you feel me? Like I didn't low pass this one, I like the top end, I just shelved it down some. And here on this other reverb, oh, didn't really do anything on that one, I just left that up, high passing and low passing here, turned down some frequencies. You see the general vibe, okay? EQ your effects. Okay, and then obviously I'm doing a little bit of mid-side. Now, I'm not trying to rely heavily on mid-side EQ unless I'm trying to create some kind of cool aesthetic or something like that, but this is a very subtle thing just to give me a little bit extra. You see, I've done most of my work here. This is literally negative 0.65 and negative 0.3. I might have could have just not even done that, but it gave me just a little bit more separation, a little more clarity in the center for that vocal in this frequency range for it to cut through a little better, or just really sit in a separated way a little better for me, for what I'm going for. Now, obviously for effects, you can compress them, you can widen them, you can do whatever you want. There's no rules to this. This is about creativity. Be creative and don't limit yourself. I'm not one of those people that's going to tell you, oh, for vocals, you should use these type of reverbs, and for pianos, you should use these type of reverbs, and guitars, you should use these type of reverbs. I don't care about none of that. There are no rules. Yeah, there are some tried and true things that people have done over the years that work well. We can all talk about those till we're blue in the face. That's fine. I use those things, but experiment. Just put a reverb on something and tweak it and play around with it and say, oh, I like that, or I don't like that, and then try another one. Oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. Try another one. Create your own vibes. Before we even get to sidechain compressing, EQing the effect, I'm getting my level right first. And then I'm going to EQ. And then I'm going to, if I need to do some compression or some sidechain compression or whatever on it. But I'm doing the heavy lifting first. A lot of people are trying to rely on sidechain compression to get their level right. No. Get your level right first, and then supplement with these extra tools or whatever. Supplement with mid-side EQ, supplement with sidechain compression to dial in the aesthetic a little bit more specifically. So I'm using that. I use this on a lot of my effects.
I done showed my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason. See, it's women like you that make it.
So I'm doing that a lot on the lead vocal. I rarely use sidechain compression on my ad-libs and background vocals when it comes to the effects on them. I rarely do that, but I'm not saying I won't. I've done it before. And I don't always use sidechain compression on every effect. I don't always use it on my reverbs or my delays. It just depends on the song and the vibe. Now, when it comes to this third reverb on the hook, this is something that I do often, is to introduce a new world, is what I call it. Introduce a new world or a new space in different sections of the song. After this song, I'm going to show you another song where I kind of went a little more extreme with the effects because I think it'll be a cool example. But in this hook, you can add different effects to give yourself a new vibe for that new section. So coming into here, we add this R-verb.
Entertainments won't commit, don't see no reason. You know what? I'll just be a hoe. I don't want no love from you. I'll just be a hoe.
So this is, again, maybe something you kind of feel or sense or detect. I don't know, depending on how hard you listening, but it's a little reverb, delay throw kind of thing, just enhancing the vibe in the back. I'll play it a little louder.
I'll just be a hoe. I don't want no love from you. I'll just be a hoe. Can't end up just fucking you.
It's just R-verb and some lo-fi, Echo Boy with the mix, 31.5, quarter note, decapitator, crunching it up, giving it some texture, some vibes, sidechain compressing it, and EQing it again and compressing it just to keep it tucked. I want this one to stay tucked in the back a little bit more. Reasons why I might compress an effect in general is because I don't want it to follow the dynamics of, say, the vocal in this case too much. When the vocal gets louder, I want that vocal to get louder and pull away from the effect. But then there are times where I want the effect to follow that vocal, or I want it to get louder than the vocal. So I'm adjusting accordingly. And then also with compression, you can use it to extend the sustain of an effect. There's a lot of reasons why you might want to compress an effect in general. It could just be a creative thing. It could be a sound design thing to compress the effect and have an interesting pumpy, compressy sound, you know, as your effect. In this case, I wanted to lock this effect in a pocket behind the vocal and just let it lift and help bring that hook and give it a little bit more of this energy for the hook. That's all. Now let's talk about these background vocals. What I did do is some things on these ad-libs where it is detectable effects. So if I solo all of the vocals,
but it's women like you that make it hard to love again. And it's women like you that flex and say you need no man. And it's women like
you hear that reverb on the ad-libs and the delay on the ad-libs. I want people to hear that. So this is a way that you can get these ad-libs to get attention, but they're still not competing with the lead vocal as far as volume and level. You can have a delay that repeats after it. You can have a reverb that is drawing more attention to the sound, but pushing it back a little bit and not taking away from the center stage vocal.
together. But it's women like you that make it hard to love again. And it's women like you that flex and say you need no man. And it's women like you that make us mental entertainments. Won't commit, don't see no reason. No, I'll just be a hoe. I don't want no love from you. I'll just be a hoe. Can't end up just...
Again with the flangers too. Maybe you could tell that it was a flanger on these vocals or on certain ad-libs, but again, that's something that you sense or feel. Even when we come to these background vocals, these vocals right here. If I listen now, I can hear the flanger, but if I listen in context, I don't hear a flanger on here. Not much, but there's a little bit of flanging on here that you can clearly hear, and it's only at 5 on the mix. You can clearly hear that when it's in solo, but it's adding texture, it's adding movement to these vocals. It's helping me get a little more separation sonically to the ear, because we have a few different vocal parts going on in this section. So I need to give each thing a little bit of a different sonic quality so the ear can separate them. And then there's a little bit of stereo width on those, a little widening with that. And of course, you know, EQ or whatever. Now for my effects on ad-libs and stacks, it's literally all just balancing. I do EQ my effects. As you can see, there's some EQing right there, some high pass and low passing, EQing more general EQ here, and then I'm doing a little more on certain places where I needed it. Now, the fifth and final mistake that I see is people having way too much of the effect on their background vocals or ad-libs to where it's super distracting. And now the lead vocal is getting lost. So you want to find that balance. Again, it's a level thing. A lot of mixing is just correcting the levels. In this case, if we play these vocals soloed,
and it's women like you that flex and say you need no man. And it's women like you that make us mental entertainments. Won't commit, don't see no reason. No, I'll just be a hoe. I love again. And it's women like you that flex and say you need no man. And it's women like you that make us mental entertainments. Won't commit, don't see no reason. No,
now this is what I would get from people. They would have this reverb on these ad-libs super loud, and like a delay and reverb super loud on these backgrounds, and it would just sound like a reverby warbly mess.
And it's women like you that flex and say you need no man. And it's women like you that make us mental entertainments. Won't commit, don't see no reason. No, I'll just be a...
Now, that may be cool, right? But it's so much going on, my ear does not know what to listen to. My ear is like, damn, do I listen to this reverbed out ad-lib? Do I listen to the lead vocal? I actually can't even hear the effects on the lead vocal anymore. Oh, there are background vocals here too. Wow. Oh man, it's just a lot going on. My ear is just like, whoa. And then couple that with bringing in music, it's too much, okay? You're overwhelming people. And this is not the type of song that is intended to overwhelm the public. Calm it down. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is managing the width of your effects. In this song, I didn't necessarily do that as much, but this is a slight trick. You have to pay attention to the panning of the production and the arrangement, and maybe you can make this change over time. But there's the horizontal plane, the vertical plane, the depth plane, the front to back plane. In your horizontal plane, you can adjust the width of your effects along with your front to back plane and really start creating an interesting world. You can have a room reverb or an ambience that's pretty tight. and then have a wider plate, and then a wider haul, and then have some kind of chorusing or doubler kind of thing somewhere in the middle, working that space and molding it and blending it together. Then you can have a delay somewhere in there as well, and then you can have your ad-libs a little more centered with their reverbs or their effect, or a little wider than the vocal situation with their effect. You can play with your horizontal plane, but you can do that as well with the width of your effects. I didn't do that much here. Maybe one could say I subtly did it with mid-side EQ, but not really. That's something to consider as well when you really have a lot going on and you want to try to get a different dimension of separation because of what's happening in the track. Now I want to go to another song, and I just want to show y'all a little more stuff for fun. Okay, so this is a song by Rico Juan called Here's to Us, and I wanted to use this one because I kind of went a little crazy with the effects. In order for me to explain this, I'm going to show you there's different sections. So there's a verse. It starts off with a verse. I'll just play it from the top real quick.
I didn't think that this could happen. You're mine, I'm yours. Baby, no, our newborn. All the things I live for. We met in college, but it was high and by. Who knew you
Okay, so that's the verse vocal aesthetic with the effects, and then we go into the hook.
like me? Girl, I'm complete. You make it easy to be in love. The future's bright for us. If you mean so much, yes to us.
So totally different aesthetic, but the vocal arrangement changed. It went from just a lead vocal with a few ad-libs here and there to this stack right here. And now we have this kind of top line vocal. And I decided, and I'll play all this rough real quick.
It easy to be in love. The future's bright for us. If you mean so much, yes to us.
So I kind of made a executive decision to be like, okay, we have all these background vocals and we're not using them. And we have this cool top line, but the background vocals are saying what needs to be said. So let's actually create a scene change for the hook and make it more of a statement instead of it going into like this way.
I need, girl, I'm complete. You make it easy to.
Like nothing really happened to me there. So when we make this adjustment,
Girl, I'm complete. You make it easy to be in love.
now we just entered a whole nother world. You feel me? Now something happened to me emotionally when I did that. In order to help create this world, the effects were a huge part of this. So we have these stacks. The reason why this is separated, these are 80, 85, and these are 90, 95. So it gets wider. The second time it comes around, it gets wider. So let's go back to the verse and how I have these effects set up. It's similar to the way that I did it in the first song, but it's a little more things going on. So the lead vocal delay, all of these lead tracks have the lead vocal delay on it, and it's just this delay one, which is just H delay with a little ping pong, and then mod delay doing whatever, and then some EQ on there, some EQ before, of course. And then I'm using this BM60 SPL Vitalizer, and the reason why I actually went with these main effects right here is because when I was listening to the reference, it had this kind of a vibe on it, and I was like, you know, I'm not mad at that. That's kind of cool. I would have actually chose a different route if I mixed it first, but I'm glad I didn't. This is another thing why I like doing this, because it's an infinite amount of ways to mix a song. There's so many options. When they took that direction for the reference, I was like, ooh, I like that. I wouldn't have done that, but I like that. So I'm gonna do it in my way. And this is what I came up with. So this lead vocal delay is on everything. It's on the verse, the hook, and these hook stacks right here. Now where things start changing is on the verse and the hook. There's this reverb. So let's solo verse real fast.
Didn't think that this could happen. You're mine, I'm yours. Baby, no, our newborn. All the things I live for.
So that's what's on the verse. That's it. Even though I do have this lead vocal reverb, but I didn't use a shared lead vocal reverb for all of these, so I didn't even use this at all. This could be inactive. Then on the hook, let's go to the hook. All right, so there's a mono reverb on this hook vocal, right? We have the lead vocal delay. We still have this on here, but we also have V and H effects. We have this on here too. In this case, you may not hear that being on there, but if I bypass this, it changes the feel of that performance, and it still also keeps it in the same world of where the verse was, but now we just add new dimensions to it. So this is where I'm adding new stuff. On H effects, this is specifically for the hook. So I'm adding spreader, got micro shift on here, the vitalizer on here, doing some EQ on it, EQ before, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm also putting this same effect, this reverb, on that spreader.
To be in love, the future's bright for us.
Just adding to that vibe and that texture. Now we have this reverb right here, which is a mono verb. I use this plugin a lot, the Dirty Dog reverb, and it's another one, the Ladybug reverb, I think it's called. Fire reverbs, very cool textured reverbs. You see in this case, I didn't even have to do nothing after it. I just used this and it sounded right. I just adjusted things. The drive and the post drive is a little OD, so I oftentimes turn that off or turn it literally all the way down, but it's still saturating and coloring the reverb even with the drive on, but it turned all the way to 0. And then I've adjusted the filters a little bit, maybe, I don't remember, but it's a very cool sounding reverb, and I'm using this in mono because I have these background vocals that are stereo and wide and they come in, but now I have this center top line thing that I can leave dark. As you can see, I didn't even do nothing to this vocal. I didn't even do nothing to it. I literally didn't do nothing to it. I was going to do something to it, but then I was like, no, I did do some subtle parallel distortion with the decapitator just to give a little more body, because maybe that's the part of it that I want to be consistent, because these other vocals are holding down the brightness and the presence. I don't need this middle vocal to be super bright and take a lot of attention because these stacks are doing that. This is what I was talking about earlier, as far as if you want something to have air, everything can't have air. If I would have put this lead top line vocal in the center to be very airy, that would have sounded kind of weird. You know, it would have been a little too overstimulating. And then if I would have made the reverb on here super wide along with those vocals being super wide, now nothing's wide. So I allowed those vocals to be wide and I allowed this vocal to be in the center with a mono reverb as well, enhancing that vibe. But when you listen to it in context with the music, it doesn't feel wrong or weird.
To be in love, the future's bright for us.
It's cool. Now the reason this is here, this is all the way turned down, as you can see. At the end, there's some automation where I turn down the mono reverb and I turn up a stereo version of the same reverb with a little bit more processing on it, a little distortion, a little width. So we'll hear that.
Yes, you are. To be in love, future's bright for us. Why you mean so much.
Now that those vocals have left, it's time to really let this reverb and this effect shine and bloom out. That's all I'm doing right there. Now let's go to this hook. So again, that lead vocal delay, this same delay is on this, keeping everything in that same world with the little slap delay situation. And then we have H2 effects. So we've got a little Studio D on here. Again, you might not have noticed that I got this on here, but watch what happens when I mute this.
You make it easy to be in love. The future's bright for us.
When I mute that, it just neuters the entire background vocal sound. This is the thickening, the slight extra crowd underneath it. You know, it's making it feel bigger and fuller and all that stuff just with this. And a little EQ on it, the subtlest EQ on it. And then I have a little reverb on there with mix down low on this ping pong 16th, and then just a little bit of super short haul. And then we got some EQ on here, blah, blah, blah. As you can see, I didn't sidechain compress a lot of these reverbs. It's all dependent on what you're hearing. I didn't go crazy with EQ on all of these. This reverb, it didn't need EQ to me, so I didn't EQ it. This Studio D didn't need EQ before it, so I didn't EQ before it. I have some sidechain compression on, but I don't on this delay, and I did on the last song, so it's song dependent. I'll play y'all this reverb though on the stacks for the hook.
You make it easy to be in love. The future's bright for us. Yvonne, you mean so much.
If I don't have that reverb in, it just feels like a dry bunch of vocals in my face. And this is R&B. Like, why are you so in my face right now? Back up just a little bit. It just creates that little bit of take a step back, softening it a little bit, but it also gives me a little room, a little space on that vocal, a little tail on those vocals. And then I did not go over this in the other song, but here's where you add your flair, your cool effects and all those kind of things. We solo these vocals, we just got little delays coming through.
We met in college, but it was high and by. Who knew years later you changed my life? I make you my wife. Mexico on the beach, you say yes. I wanna be there for all of your steps. I'm at my best. You're all I need. Girl, I'm complete.
Again, just little moments, just grabbing parts of the vocal, dragging it down here, putting stuff on it to make moments and effects. Those are like blemishes and enhancements for the vibe. This moment right here is another additional aesthetic that added to the emotion of the song that, again, maybe people don't hear it, but you definitely sense it and feel it. I think you can detect it as well, but I'm gonna play it right here and this mono slap comes in.
Oh, when I was hopeless, you gave me a reason to dream. You never leave. You stayed on my team through the hard times. You stuck beside me.
Again, just a cool vibe thing. I'm gonna play that with the music.
I was hopeless. You gave me a reason to dream. You never leave. You stayed on my team through the hard times. You stuck beside me. Happy anniversary. You mean the world to me. You make it easy to be in love.
Again, just carrying that vibe, building and moving and swaying the song with effects. And then down here for this ad-lib, when this ad-lib comes in, this is another way I may do effects sometimes. I may just duplicate the track and put some effects on it right underneath it. So in this case, again, this is just creativity and expression. I just panned a reverb all the way to the right. All I did is duplicate this, and then I put deverb on it on the stock setting, and then EQ'd it just like that. That's it. And I'm panning this to the left. So now it starts over here, and then I pan this to the left, and you still have that reverb on the right. Just staying interesting with the song. These are some extra backgrounds for the second hook. On these, I didn't even add no effects. Sometimes it's just level. You don't need to do nothing crazy. On both of these hook backgrounds, I've added a little bit of a meta flanger and a little bit of an ensemble. That's it. Again, you might not have been able to tell that this was on the vocals, but it is. So that's a feel and it's maybe a sense thing if you really have a really, really good ear. Let's play that and A/B both of these. You hear how it blends them more together, it melds them and gels them a little more together. That's why I like using these types of effects directly on the background vocals. But I didn't even use any reverbs or nothing else. That's it. So guys, that is my philosophy generally on vocal effects, but effects in general. Let me know if this video was helpful for you in the comments. Let me know what other videos you want me to make. You know I can't end a video without doing the YouTube member shout out. If y'all do want to join the YouTube membership, I've been live streaming almost weekly at this point. And all of the replays for the live stream are going to be up on the YouTube membership, and I've got live mixes on there. I'm about to start adding courses on there. I got a course coming from y'all very soon. It's actually a Pro Tools course. I'm going to teach y'all everything about Pro Tools that you need to know for recording and mixing. Is coming soon. So if you haven't joined the YouTube membership, I guarantee you want to tap in right now on the gold tier specifically. That new course is going to be on the gold tier specifically. You ain't gonna want to miss that one. But we got Dominique Jackson, J. Irv 1989, Hussein, Twin, Pit Stop, Loop Layers, Gaz Shanksky. What's good, Gaz Shanksky? 8th Floor Productions, mixed by Jay and Amos Watson. Thank y'all so much for joining the YouTube membership. Y'all keep this thing going. I'm telling you, it's been a little minute, but we back. If you're liking the vibe, like and subscribe. I'll see y'all in the next video.